to welcome everyone to this hybrid meeting of the Planning Committee. This planning meeting is being broadcast live over the internet and will be available to view online now and in the future. Please be aware that this meeting is being transcribed only for the purpose of producing the minutes. This transcript will be deleted once the committee approves the minutes. The transcript should not be downloaded by anyone other than Democratic Services. We welcome the use of the Welsh language at meetings. I have had no requests for people to speak Welsh today, so this meeting will be conducted in English only. Those attending in the chamber, please be aware that we are all on camera and you may be visible on screen when people around you are speaking, and please remember to speak clearly into your microphones. Committee members participating remotely, can you please refrain from using the chat function and instead use the raised hand icon to indicate when you want to speak. Please remember to keep your microphone muted when you are not talking. May I remind members that as per statutory guidance made under Section 4 of the Local Government Wales Measure 2011 and our formally adopted hybrid meeting policy, any member attending a meeting remotely must be able to be seen and heard by the members and officers who are attending the meeting, as well as by members of the public viewing the meeting. So can I ask that you all please use your cameras for the duration of the meeting? Thank you. Right, we'll move on to the agenda. Agenda item 1, attendance and apologies. Rachel, do we have any apologies?
I've received apologies from Councillor Stuart Ashley.
Thank you, Rachel. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Rachel, could you please ask members in alphabetical order to state whether they have any interest to declare?
Yeah, sure. Councillor Evans.
Sorry, you caught me off guard. Could you counter that? You know it first. No, sorry, no.
Councillor Gordon.
Nothing for me, thank you.
Councillor Horler.
Nothing for me.
Councillor Gaynor James.
None from me.
Councillor John James.
Nothing from me.
Councillor Janet Jones.
Nothing for me.
Councillor Mark Jones.
Nothing I'm aware of.
Councillor Parish.
Nothing to declare.
Councillor Slade.
Nothing to declare.
Councillor Tew.
Nothing I'm aware of.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Right, we'll move on. Agenda item 3, minutes of the Planning Committee from the 17th of December 2025. Members, could you possibly state whether you have anything to raise in relation to the minutes? If not, I'll take them as approved. I can't see any hands up, so we'll take them as approved. Thank you. Right. Agenda item 4, planning application 25P0458 FUL. Proposed erection of 24 eco-houses at Tir Iwan Farm, T Canol Way, Green Meadow, Cwm Brown. Can I ask Justin Jones, Group Leader and Development Management, to present the report?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Committee. I'll just get the presentation up.
Good morning.
Can you all see that at home, Chair?
I can see it, yes.
Okay, thank you. Committee will be familiar with this application. It's been before committee twice, and first time it was refused, the second time it went to appeal for non-determination, and members will remember that it was, if the opportunity to determine the application had been before members, they would have refused it, and those reasons are outlined within the report. A key fact that members should note in terms of this resubmission is that the red line has been changed. Previously, the red line included this parcel of land that has now been excluded from the application. You'll also note that the applicant also owns a parcel of land in blue, which isn't the subject of this application. In terms of the aerial photographs, members will be aware of the area, but just as an aide-memoire, this is the application site that we're looking at today. There is the Grade 2 listed barn. Here's Rosemead, and the access to the site is proposed through Rosemead. As you can see, it's an undulating green field with residential either side. And obviously, as you can see, and as we've discussed before, there is a very steep incline gradient across the site going, as you can see there. And there's a better picture of that gradient, as you can see. So we look at Rosemead, we've looked at this before. Obviously, you can see the scale and character and materials used in Rosemead, the buff brick, two-storey dwellings. This is the access point, so as members will recall, we've got a turning head at the moment, and obviously the access will go through there. It will require the removal of the street lamp and that to be relocated. So this is the previous scheme that was refused and was before the inspector when she determined the application. We look at what has changed. The key difference, as you'll see straight away, Chair, is that those two houses have been removed, and one of those houses has now gone into plot 12. But in all sense and purposes, it remains pretty much the same in terms of proposed landscaping, retaining walls, and the pattern of development. You'll also note at the end of the turning area, we have the paths that were there before that will link into the public open space and down towards the public right-of-way. So here's some aerial photos, or visuals, sorry, of the proposed site. And obviously, we've still got the retaining walls. There's a public right-of-way that we had along there that still exists. And again, here's it looking from the other way. So this is Rosemead, and again, scale massing, two-storey buff brick with cladding around it, on the brick around here. Again, as we saw and we discussed last time, Chair, we've got tiered gardens both to the north and south of the road. So this is the view from the Grade 2 listed building. Again, the key feature that's been removed from this is obviously those two houses there. That was a concern for the inspector. We look at the plots. So plot 1 is flats, which are 1 bedrooms, so that's the configuration of those. This is the typical 4-bedroom, as you can see, 4 bedrooms upstairs, integral garage, and then parking spaces, driveway to the front. And these are the 3 bedrooms, as you can see. This is plot 12, so this is where one of those houses that's been removed has gone into. So again, we got 1-bedroom flats there. Again, as we saw before, we got the retaining features, and they're outlined within the report, but this is the visuals of them. That hasn't changed. And again, these are cross sections, which we would have seen before. The ecological features, again, is pretty much the same, other than we've got the exclusion of that area. The other point that members will note is, again, as we discussed last time, there's the access point to that field that is owned by the applicant. That was there before, and that isn't anything new. So again, this is what it looks like in bird's eye view. Again, we've got the parking spaces on the drives, and again, these are all matters that were considered by the inspector in her consideration. So this one also shows you the principles of what's happening with the SUDS features, which is obviously to do with porous material and on-site mitigation. The SUDS isn't as detailed, but it shows the broad principles, so it allows the local planning authority to have some confidence that when it goes to the SABA body, which is a separate consenting regime, that the theory, in principle, could be met, meeting the 6 criteria that the SAB body will look at. In terms of the public rights-of-way, as we discussed before, there is a public right-of-way that's indicated there, will have to be diverted. There's also one that goes along there. The proposal at this moment in time is for it to be diverted along the footpath. The public rights-of-way officer has said that potentially that is okay, but it will be subject to its own consenting regime for which members of the public and ward councillors will be consulted. There are other options that they've been asked to look at, which is to go up and around and then back down, or to divert along the existing public rights-of-way. But what this shows you, committee, is that there are a number of possibilities for the public rights-of-way to be diverted. For awareness of members, we've had late representation since the committee report has been published, and these have been forwarded to us from the local ward councillors. I'll read them out to you. Basically, there's a long-standing objection to further development above Rosemead and Meadowside in Fairwater. In fact, the council took a decision some years ago not to develop further up the mountainside, and that was supported by residents. Planning has been refused on numerous occasions, the last one, I believe, on the listed building close to the proposed application. I do not recall receiving the planning list with the application included, but I have missed it. But anyway, this proposal doesn't overcome the long-standing objection that residents and ward councillors have raised, and in fairness, Chair, the planning committee have also raised in the past. Another objection, like representation that was received, also states that given the previous refusals, why has there been a change in the recommendation? The listed building issue aside, the original refusal considered the site not suitable for development. It is considered that the proposed scale of development and design approach is incompatible with the site conditions and local character. This is evident by the inability to provide parking spaces in accordance with the adopted standards. Road gradients need to be extensively engineered, resulting in numerous retaining structures, lack of suitable or usable garden spaces, resulting in a proposal that is visually and physically dominated by the built form and associated services. The proposal therefore represents inappropriate and unacceptable development at the semi-rural edge of settlement located contrary to PPW, Planning Policy Wales. And the other one, late representation, also reiterates those points that have been raised. So as members will see, within Appendix A is the appeal decision. That is a material consideration and is based upon up-to-date planning policy considerations. You will note that in that appeal decision in Appendix A that the inspectors looked at matters of scale, massing, traffic impact, drainage, and found them all to be acceptable. The main consideration why the appeal was dismissed was upon the impact upon the listed building, and obviously the inspector in her decision clearly stated that the egregious features were that of plots 9 and 10, and obviously, as you've seen, Chair, this scheme has removed those features, so therefore it's considered that the concerns of why the appeal was dismissed have been overcome. There is another point that members will wish to look at, which is obviously different from the previous appeal, and that is the affordable housing. And the report sets out the requirements of that, and along with that, there is the requirement for a viability assessment that has been submitted, which outlines why the development is unable to provide the policy-compliant, affordable housing. That model has been looked at. It's the development viability model, which is the method that the council uses itself for when we do our RLDP. There has been discussions in terms of those figures. Those figures and how they're incorporated are based on best practice, which is set by the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, and that is also adopted in planning policy. So those have been looked at, and it's considered that the viability is considered correct. As members will see in the report, the viability ranges around about 10%. If you change the figures a little bit, it could go up to 14%. But critically, what is considered to be a viable scheme is anything 20 plus, and that's recognised in industrial standards. So this is below that, and obviously that 20% figure is based upon a willing selling of the land and the willing developer taking on the risk. So based upon that, it is accepted that the scheme can't provide the Section 106 requirements. And again, as members will be aware, I'm sure we'll discuss, policy S8 of our LDP does consider that as part of any consideration of planning obligations. Viability is a matter that we need to consider and look at. So those are the points that have been raised, and obviously they've been considered in the report. That's the end of the presentation. Happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Justin. Right, we've got one hand up. Councillor Stephen Evans. Would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. There seems to be a lot of issues regarding the potential for flooding. What are we putting in as mitigation? Because we are taking a lot of trees out, which hold water back. But I know the residents have been objecting about the water, the service water in the area already. So how are we sort of mitigating to stop this potential of being a high risk for flooding?
Right, thank you. Justin, could you answer that, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Obviously, the main flooding issue comes from surface water. Surface water is dealt with through the SAB authority. The principles in broad headline can be achieved, and I believe, Chair, that the inspector did look at that and believe that that could be addressed through the SAB regulatory process. So in terms of that, it is considered that in broad principles it can be done, but obviously further details will be required, and that could be done through the SAB regulatory process.
Right, thank you. We've got Councillor Carl Gordon. Carl?
Yeah, so thank you, Chair. Just like a point of clarity and a question, if you like. Put some colour on this for me, if you would, Justin. So the Planning Committee previously rejected this or refused this application, and was appealed, and the listed building was the main factor, as I understand it. Correct me if I'm wrong, in the sort of decision that Pedro made. Moving plots 9 and 10 away from the listed building, has that sufficiently mitigated that element of it? Do we think, or is there still an impact on the listed building? Clearly, I don't know enough about planning law to sort of be advised on that. I'm particularly concerned about the residents in Rosemead. I'm putting myself in their position. You've got that turning circle stroke parking area in their sort of estate, if you like. That's going to be the access road. What impact is going to that on sort of, particularly during the construction phase, but longer term, with a loss of parking spaces there and increased traffic through their sort of residential area? Is that going to be an issue which affects the quiet enjoyment of their properties? Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Justin?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor, for your question. And yeah, the points that you've raised were the points that we refused previously, and obviously the inspector looked at those concerns in terms of parking. What I will say is that that area where that turning head is, it is a turning head. It isn't supposed to be used for parking. I know that people do use it for parking, but it isn't designed for that. You know, the consideration was also by the highways officer, who had no objections to this, in that it is an adopted highway. It is, principal purpose it is to move traffic. It isn't additional parking spaces for residents. Whilst that is what we all do, I accept that. That isn't what it's designed to do. It's designed to move people around. Again, the highways officer had no objections to the proposal in terms of the principle of access. And again, if you look at the appeal decision, the inspector has also considered matters of parking in terms of sustainable locations, and finds it acceptable that the proposal on access is acceptable. Whether we agree with the inspector's decision or not, it is a material consideration, and if members wanted to go back on those matters that the inspector had already looked at through the previous scheme, it is a matter for you as the decision makers, but there will be opening yourselves up to unreasonable behaviour because those matters have already been looked at, and therefore they are in principle acceptable. In terms of the listed buildings, point that you make, that has been looked at, in particular paragraph 18. I won't read it all, but inter alia it says the proposed dwellings at plots 9 and 10, due to their form, position and contemporary appearance, would significantly detract from the significance of the barn at TON Farm. Competing with this listed building is presently understood, experienced and appreciated. So the inspector is clearly given a clue to where she considers the significant impact. You're right, Councillor, that the development in a whole will have some impact upon the listed building, because obviously it looks at the greenfield and obviously there will be houses on it, so there is some impact, but obviously the inspector says that that is acceptable in the main, other than for plots 9 and 10, which obviously this scheme removes, and therefore it's considered, based upon the appeal decision, that that harm to the listed building is now acceptable.
Right. Carl, is that okay for you?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you, Chair. I still have my misgivings, right, but Justin's explained it well. Thank you. Yes,
he has. Yes. Next, I've got Councillor Alan Slade. Alan?
Thank you, Chair. I'm a little bit confused because I know the area quite well, and this will be a really, people who live in there will be dependent on cars. As far as I'm aware, it's quite a walk to a bus stop, and the bus service isn't really that great. I don't think there's any evening service. I'd be surprised if there's much of a Sunday service. So I'm just a little bit confused over this. The site is really steep as well. So they talk about distances, but it's, the steepness of getting to the site is quite a steep hill. If you could just enlighten me, because I think we've refused planning on sustainability in terms of car dependency in the past, and I'm a little shocked, if you like, that this seems to be acceptable now. If you could give me your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Justin, can you answer it, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. Again, the authority has on 2 occasions explained those issues, and obviously they're in the committee reports about the siting location and the steepness of the hills and predominantly car use. What I will say to members is, in the appeal decisions, especially paragraphs 7, 8 and 9, and 10 have looked at the sustainable locations, and I think paragraph 9 in itself it is also key, and I'll read a little bit of it. The site complies with the SPJ criteria in terms of public transport, proposed active, but I think the key point is that the inspector said, I observed pedestrians utilising the footway in Tea Canal Way and Rosemary during my site visit. So it's clear that the inspector, when making this decision, had visited the site, was aware of the steepness of those hills and the characteristics of it. So all I can say to that point, Chair Committee, is that the inspector has looked at the site, has visited the site and has looked at those characteristics of it being a steep hill. And she also says, I am not persuaded that the distances or the topography walking routes would render the site unsustainable. The scheme does not include pedestrian cycle links to the west of the site. Nevertheless, it does propose a pedestrian link to the southeast and the closest bus stop. So the inspector has looked at this scheme and has looked at the characteristics of the area and has found it to be acceptable. Now, again, as I said earlier on, Chair, if members want to disagree with that, then that is your right as a decision maker. But when we go back to appeal, because that's where we'll go, it would meet the test of unreasonable behaviour, because that matter has already been looked at by the inspector and has found to be acceptable. So that's all I can say to the point that Councillor Slade has made. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Justin. Right, I can't see any other hands up.
Chair, could I just...
Yes.
I think, well, there must be a lesson to be learned here that perhaps we've been too strict in the past when looking at these sites where they are car dependent, or we think they are. I'm really confused. So I get your point, and we can't refuse it on the grounds of sustainability, so it is what it is. Thank you, Chair. That'll do.
Thank you, Councillor. Carl, want to come in again?
Yes, thanks, Chair. I'm looking through the sort of objections. One of the sort of things that's a live topic, as I'm sure it is across Torfaen, is sort of flooding and drainage. I've looked at the Welsh Water kind of response to the consultation, and they're saying require hydraulic modelling assessment, whatever that may be. It's above my pay grade, at least. There are a number of conditions on this application, so there's a lot of hoops to be jumped through. But I think we've got most of the bases covered. I think Councillor Slade makes excellent points around active travel and sort of transport links and all the rest of it. But there we are. The drainage concerns me. I don't know if Justin would like to sort of comment on that. I'm not particularly anxious about it being on a hill, because I'm from the Rhymney Valley originally, and I can assure you Wales is full of mountains, and sometimes you have to build properties on gradients, and so I've got a good experience of that. But yeah, if you just sort of make a comment, I think, on some of the recommendations, Justin, particularly the water drainage piece, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Justin, can you do it, please?
I'll give it a go, Chair. Again, I'm no hydrologist, but what I can say is that Welsh Water, in terms of... There's three main areas here, isn't there? One of foul, and Welsh Water find that acceptable, that there is capacity for it to be able to connect to, and that foul can then be serviced. There is what's called portable water, and that is to do with the pressure of getting clean water to sites. So it's interesting that on the previous applications, Welsh Water have raised no objections to it. Now on this one, they have in terms of water pressure, and obviously that is consistent with what residents have said in their responses. So we have a condition that there would be no development to be undertaken until acceptable water pressure to the site and therefore vicariously to the adjoining properties has also been submitted to approved and agreed in writing with local planning authority, who will liaise with Welsh Water. The applicant and agent are aware of this criteria. It is something that can be overcome, hence why we put a condition on. But obviously that will be done through the modelling. It isn't a cheap option, it will be expensive, but it is something that we have put as a pre-commencement. It is critical that it is addressed before work is done on site. In terms of then the flooding, which Councillor Evans also raised in relation to sustainable drainage. Again, the inspector has looked at that, and I direct members to paragraphs 21 and 22 of her appeal decision, where she says that I am satisfied that suitable arrangements for surface water drainage could be made in accordance with the requirements of LD policies S3, S7 and BW1 and Part B and TAM 15 and PPW. So again, the inspector has looked at that submission in terms of those details are by and large the same in this submission, so it is considered acceptable that matter can be overcome. And again, the drainage officer, in broad headlines, there'll have to be significant details going in terms of commuted SAMs and where that drainage sits. And that's done through the SAB regime, as we know, and that has the 6 criteria that I looked at. But obviously the key principle is that surface water is dealt with on site and then percolates off-site at a later date. Those broad principles are acceptable here, but obviously further details will have to come forward through the SAB process. So again, as members will aware, there's 2 key regulatory frameworks that need to be looked at in developments. One is obviously the planning, and then obviously one is the SAB, and the 2 have to be complied with before development starts on site. I think the other point I'd like to pick up that councillors have made aware is that we have reduced the time period from the standard 5 years to 2, and we've done that, as the report highlights, because of the viability. They're saying it's not viable to provide anything. We don't disagree with that. But then, as a result, because these things are time sensitive, we have reduced the time period for them to start, not to finish, to start work down to 2 years, and we can do that under Section 92 of the Town and Country Planning Act, which allows us to vary the time period. And you'll also note that we have also, through a Section 106, also looked at viability to be considered after the first 5 houses have been built. Now, that figure and the reason for that is that at this moment the viability is based upon assumptions and models, and obviously those costings could change. They could go higher or lower. But it is felt that once they've built 5 houses, we'll know the known costs in terms of the engineering works, so we'll have proper figures for that. And I think critically, and this is one of the areas where there's been discussions in the viability chair, is over the selling price. There hasn't been a wide range of this type of house selling within the area for us to get an accurate picture of those prices. So we feel that once we get to 5, we should have a better understanding of what those prices will be. And critically, the development isn't so advanced that we wouldn't be able, if possible, to get any Section 106 coming forward. So that's why those conditions are as they are. I hope that gives some logic to how we've come to the conclusion. I know members and the public are disappointed with the recommendation, but the clarity of why that has got to be based upon the inspector's decision, which is independent of us, and obviously it has looked at the issues that have been raised, and therefore that's the recommendation.
Right, thank you. Oh, there's another hand gone up. Councillor Slade, you got a question?
Well, it's more of I think we don't seem to have a lot of choice over this, to be honest, as I see it. So I would move that we, I'd move that we, recommend acceptance then.
I would second that.
Seconder. Right, thank you. Right, before we go into vote, I'd like to thank Justin for his very comprehensive answers throughout this. I think he's presented it to us in a, how can I say, in a very comprehensive way. He's gone through everything. So I thank you for that, Justin. And I now ask Rachel, could you please ask members in alphabetical order to state whether they are for, against or are abstaining?
Yes, thank you. Councillor Evans?
Yeah, all with conditions, thank you.
Councillor Gordon?
For.
Councillor Horler?
For.
Councillor Gaynor James?
For.
Councillor John James?
For.
Councillor Janet Jones?
For with conditions.
Councillor Mark Jones?
Yeah, 4 with the strict conditions, please.
Councillor Norma Parish?
For.
Councillor Slade?
For.
Councillor Tew?
For.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, this application has been approved, and I thank you all for your patience throughout it. And this is the last on the agenda today, so I thank everyone for your attendance and your contributions, and I now close the meeting.